am reclaiming my time.
If you want to take it outside.
Trust me, Nancy Mace, you do not want to take it outside. Not only with Jasmine Crockett, but with anybody.
Trans girls are girls.
What's up, everybody? Ty Rivera here, the absolute best LGBTQ comedian in the world. All right, so I'm sure a lot of you have heard about the argument already between Jasmine Crockett and Nancy Mace.
She gonna keep saying trans, trans, trans so that people will feel threatened. And child, listen, I want y'all to tell me whether or
Do not call me a child. I am no child.
I want
Don't
to
even
find
start.
out
I am a grown
which
woman.
of those emails actually have
ceilings.
Chairman, I am reclaiming my time.
You will not do that. I am not a child.
I am reclaiming my time.
If you want to take it outside,
Mr. Chairman, the committee is not in order.
Order.
Point of order.
Order.
I just wanted to chime in and do a quick video because Nancy Mace gets on my nerves worse than probably anybody else. And I know some people wouldn't get that because they're like, but you're supposed to be a Trump supporter. Well, technically so was Nancy Mace, but she bailed on that after January 6th. And then there was a point in 2022 where she tried to make it look like Trump had endorsed her by standing in front of Trump Tower. And I'll read you guys the quote from Donald Trump himself because you know he doesn't like to mince words. She went to New York and stood in front of the magnificent Trump Tower. Has anyone ever heard of the Trump Tower? And did a commercial insinuating that I was endorsing her, he said. She's standing over in front of Trump Tower in New York. I'm saying, can you believe this? It was untruthful, just like everything else she does. And that's the way I feel about Nancy Mace. I don't feel that there is a sincere bone in her body. And when I was watching this argument go down, I was really embarrassed for her because I went ahead and did the research on like the backstory and where it had started. And what happened was they weren't talking about trans in bathrooms. They weren't talking about trans in sports at that point. What they were talking about was the Civil Rights Subcommittee, which you may have your feelings on that. And I have my own personal feelings on that. But this video isn't about that.
During the 118th Congress, oversight Republicans disbanded one of the most important subcommittees in Congress, the subcommittee on civil rights and civil liberties.
So Jasmine Crockett is really trying to push for this, right? And she gives this story about how she had met with Lyndon B. Johnson's. I had a dog named Lyndon B. Johnson. He lives in California right now. Never mind Lyndon B. But Lyndon B. Johnson's daughter, she was sitting next to her.
That person was Lucy Baines Johnson.
During Jimmy Carter's funeral, and she talked about the importance of civil rights. So then Nancy Mace goes into this thing about how this is coming from a party that can't even tell you what a woman is.
Again, I don't know what's going on today. I find it extremely rich and offensive. So we're talking about civil rights. I'm the former ranking member on the Civil Rights Subcommittee, something I believe in civil rights and civil liberties of all Americans. And we were talking about infringement of individual people. Also, quote, the right to privacy of individuals. Coming from a party that can't define what a woman is and won't give women the right to privacy.
And it's like, I get that, Nancy, but how about we talk about what we're here to talk about right now? How about we not derail everything into trans and bathrooms? And last I checked, because I did a story on it, in the Capitol, they're not currently allowing trans women in the women's bathrooms. So why are you still talking about that? And I'm tired of hearing about what Nancy's offended about. Like, she's always like, this is offensive to me that we're even, hey, Snowflake, how about we slow down and stop worrying about your triggers all the time?
Mr. Chairman, this is a deeply offensive conversation to me today.
How about we actually be able to talk about something other than just what Nancy Mace wants to talk about all the time? And I know there's some women out there that actually believe Nancy Mace is holding the line. Nancy Mace is all about us. No, Nancy Mace is about herself. That's why she turned on Trump at a point, and that's why before, and let me read you another quote, this time from Nancy Mace herself, and this is a tweet from her. I'll put this on the screen so you guys can see it and know that I'm not lying to you, but this is a tweet from her. I strongly support LGBTQ rights. No one should ever be discriminated against. Religious liberty, gay rights, and transgender equality can all coexist. I'm also a constitutionalist. We have to ensure anti-discrimination laws don't violate religious freedoms. Okay, so how do we go from this person right here to suddenly saying the word tranny constantly and even saying it yesterday during that same meeting?
How many of these
During that same meeting yesterday, she literally said, chicks with dicks.
Chicks with dicks.
It's like, what are you, a frat bro? I thought you were supposed to be a member of Congress. And yeah, I do agree that there should be a certain amount of decorum. And also when Jasmine Crockett said child, because that's what set Nancy Mace off, is that at a point, Jasmine Crockett was talking and she said child. And when she said child, that's not the same as child. So when Nancy started acting like a literal child and was like, how dare you call me a child? You will not call me a child. That is disrespectful. I have broken glass ceilings. And it's like, did you break those glass ceilings with your head? Because there is no reason for that reaction to the term child. I've hung out with so many black women at this point, and so many of them have called me child in different contexts, and never have I ever felt it to be insulting. Even when we didn't agree on what we were talking about, I didn't feel at all that they were calling me a child. It's not even spelled like child. It's C-H-I-L-E. That's the way it's usually spelled. And if you were ever in a conversation with a black woman and she used the expression child and you lost it the way Nancy Mace had lost it, everybody in the room would look at you and be like, are you nuts? Why would you have that reaction to that expression? It's like saying girlfriend. It's not even at all insulting. And now people online are trying to be like, oh, that was insulting. She shouldn't have called Nancy that. And it's like, have none of you ever hung out with black women in your life? That is the most common expression ever when it comes to talking to black women. And Nancy Mace grew up in South Carolina and went to the same high school as Charlemagne the God. With Charlemagne the God from The Breakfast Club, I've referenced him before. He is black. He is pro-black. And him and Nancy Mace are friends. She was just on The Breakfast Club not too long ago. So she knows the way that these expressions work. She knows it wasn't an insult. She just knew that somebody was hot on her trail, and that's something Nancy Mace does all the time. As soon as somebody's onto her and calls her out about something that's either an inconsistency in her thinking or an inconsistency in her past behaviors, all of a sudden she gets real offended and she has to shut down the conversation. And that's what she was doing with Jasmine Crockett. It was so transparent what she was trying to do. I don't know how the average person didn't pick it up. And when people ask her when she had the change of heart on trans, she shouldn't be offended by that, and she shouldn't act like that's people being mean to her. Really, it's just people saying, hey, what gives? Not too long ago, you were saying you were pro-LGBT. You were saying you were pro-trans. And how about we just want an answer to what gave you the change of heart? And that should never offend you. It's like I always tell you guys, I talk about the fact that I've had trans friends for so long all the time. So say one day, all of a sudden I change my tune and was like, F all trans people. I don't like trans people altogether. They deserve no rights or consideration at all. And to a point, I do feel that way. And I'm very honest about the fact that it's because of the trans activist and the way that they've kind of overstepped in so many ways and there's no gatekeeping. I can tell you very clearly what changed my stance on where I was with trans in, say, 2008 or so, before the trans movement got so far ahead of itself and started allowing everybody. But I can tell you why it is my mind changed. I don't get offended by that question, and I don't get embarrassed by it, and I don't feel like I've at all flip-flopped. I feel like really I've just taken a logical step in responding to what was them going too far as the trans activists and where we are now. Nancy Mace can't answer that. Instead, she gets offended. Just like on this, when Jasmine Crockett brought up, you're always talking about trans. That's basically what she said. And she's like, it's just because your coffers are running low.
But I can see that somebody's campaign coffers really are struggling right now. So she gonna keep saying trans, so that people will feel threatened. And child, listen.
And I really do agree with that. Now, Jasmine Crockett, do I agree with her in general?
And now in the 119th Congress, the chairman and House Republicans have decided to prioritize the demands of the real president, Elon Musk, and his billionaire friends over the needs of the American people.
I do not. But at the same time, to me, the truth is the truth, and I'm not worried about partisan politics when it comes to calling people out on their actual BS. And I have a huge problem with the way all of these people, to a degree, gum up the system. And if you ask me, Marjorie Taylor Greene,
Bleach blonde, bad built butch body.
A what now?
could go. AOC could go. We'll talk about her in a second. Jasmine Crockett could go. Nancy Mace could really go. All four of those people, if you ask me, could go. With them, it's all about emotion. And I know that there's plenty of women that do not just run on emotion all the time. And those are the women that don't usually make it onto the clips. Those are the women that they're not usually doing sound bites and stories about. Like if you think about a person like Nancy Mace, she always claims to get offended. And for me, that is one of the cheapest hustles ever. Like when somebody asks you a question that there should be a very simple answer to, and instead you're like, I can't believe you would ask me that. And it's like, can you please just compose yourself? Let's really act like we're adults. Let's really act like we're representing the American people right now, because that's what you claim to do, even though I would argue you're just there to get sound bites, raise your social media profile, get your little money off of X, because I guarantee you Nancy Mace is making a decent chunk of change off of complaining on X all the time. That's why she's posting there all the time. And if you know anything about posting on X, it does suck a lot of time out of your day, because she's more interested in being a social media influencer. And when you're talking about, do you want to step outside? You don't want to step outside. The last time you had any kind of physical contact with anybody, you ended up with a sling and an injury in two places, as you put it, from a handshake. Now, I know some people are going to be like, well, that man was twice her size. A handshake should not tear you up like that. I don't care who it is shaking your hand. A handshake should not tear you up like that. If you're a fighter, if you're just the average person with soft hands and soft bones, you play piano, I get it. But if you're supposed to be Miss Tough, Miss, do you want to step outside? Miss, come at me, bro.
Come at me, bro.
Then you don't get to be hurt by handshakes. That's not the way that works. And I'm tired of people making excuses for this person and acting like she's holding the line. Holding the line for what? The women's bathroom at the Capitol? Because I don't really know what she's holding the line for. And yeah, I know that she pretends to stand up for women's rights, but that's just a ploy. And then you have AOC's stupid ass when they were talking about trans in sports, and she was like, trans girls are girls. Before we go any further, I just want to ask that you like, comment, and subscribe. We just passed 64,000 subscribers. We're on our way to 100. Let's see how long it takes us to get there, or better yet, let's see how quickly we can get there. Also, make sure you hit the bell and click on all notifications so you know every time I upload. Now, let's get on with this video.
Trans girls are girls.
No, let's be very clear. Trans girls are boys. I don't care how nice you're trying to be, AOC. That's just not true. But one of the things that she did say that really did hit home for me is when she asked what the mechanism for enforcement was going to be. And that is a good question.
The majority right now says there's no place in this bill that says it opens up for genital examinations. Well, here's the thing. There's no enforcement mechanism in this bill. And when there is no enforcement mechanism, you open the door to every enforcement mechanism.
And that's something Nancy Mace wasn't able to answer when they asked her that about the Capitol bathrooms. There were points where people had asked her during interviews, how is this going to be enforced? And she was like, I'm going to leave that up to the sergeant at arms. That's his job. And it's like, okay, so you know what is supposed to happen, but you don't have a solution for the way that it's supposed to be enforced, and you're going to leave that in the hands of a man? Isn't that kind of a dangerous situation to leave in the hands of a man? And I'm not saying anything against the sergeant at arms. I went ahead and looked him up. I saw him. He does look kind of like a creep, but any old man like that looks kind of like a creep. But seriously though, we have seen men abuse their power over girls and women over and over and over. So if Nancy Mace is really the champion for women that she's pretending to be, and also the survivor that she claims to be,
And as a survivor,
and the advocate that she claims to be, then why doesn't she come up with a solution? And the reason for that, the answer for that, is because when it comes down to it, bathrooms in general are going to be, for the most part, unenforceable. You can put somebody on the door to make sure that they check IDs all the time, but I'm going to tell you, you're going to catch a lot of actual females, genetic women that look like men because some woman gets like, I don't feel comfortable with this person. And let me tell you, the first time time that happens to the wrong person, the Karen that called the store supervisor or whoever it is that's in charge of checking IDs in front of the bathroom, like I said, I don't know whose job that's going to be, but say it happens at a store. The Karen that actually blows the whistle on the woman that just looks like a man, don't be surprised if she ends up getting her ass whooped. But AOC really should call her out about the fact that she doesn't have a solution. And while anybody can point out a problem, only a real G is going to be able to come up with a solution. So when you get that solution, come back to us. Otherwise, you're just another asshole telling us about problems we all know exist, but not offering any real help on. And then what bothers me about the Nancy Mace situation, to get back to that with the Jasmine Crockett thing, is when they were talking about it and they said that Nancy Mace was inciting violence.
I'd like those words to be taken down. I am moving to have those words taken down. I believe it's against the rules to
Going outside doesn't incite violence.
And the chairman was like, well, she could have meant like have a cup of coffee or talk.
What the gentlelady said was, we can take this outside if you want. And
Okay, so
that could mean you could go outside and have a cup of coffee or perhaps a beer, or, you know, I mean, we have
seriously,
lots of conversations outside. So I'm going to rule that that it was, just
that it's okay.
that it's okay.
And it's like, that is not what do you want to take this outside means. We all know what that means. So for them to make it seem like something other than it was, to me shows way more bias than I actually want to see. Also, when Representative Fallon stepped in and was like,
is it true that Ms. Mace was belittled by being called a child? Is that against our rules?
and it's like, that is not what child means. That's not the way that it's ever used. Are you people pretending that you've never hung out with black women in your life? I'm not understanding. Even Nancy Mace herself, after they called her on inciting violence, was like, I was not inciting violence. That was not what that was.
I did not threaten violence. I threatened no violence. I threatened no violence.
There was no violence.
As long as at the end.
I threatened no violence. None.
You're making up shit as you go. And she actually used the word shit.
You're making shit up as you go along. You might want to figure this one out.
Order. There was no,
Mr. Chairman, cursing today.
You're in Congress and you're using the word shit, but we're going to be mad at Jasmine Crockett because she used the expression child. But Nancy Mace using terms like tranny, chicks with dicks, saying shit. All of that is completely okay. But when it comes to Jasmine Crockett, suddenly we're all supposed to be so up in arms just because she used a term that a lot of black women use every single day, and most of us don't get offended about and actually find it endearing. And on the last thing, as far as child went, I would even argue that Jasmine Crockett was addressing the room when she said child and just expressing kind of frustration over this being Nancy's constant issue and not really addressing Nancy directly. Nancy just decided to take that one because she was being called out and she needed to stop that chain of thought, because the last thing she needs is somebody putting a spotlight on her, especially when there's cameras running, about the fact that really she's a Johnny come lately to this situation. You think about how long we've been dealing with the trans getting carried away, which I can tell you for me, as 2015 was when this really became an issue with them taking over what it is to be women. It's just you guys weren't paying attention to it like that. But I can tell you that it was since 2015, and that's 9 years ago now. So Nancy, 9 years later, she decides to catch up, and now she's the most hardcore support ever. And I am very big on common sense, in case you haven't noticed, and I am more about common sense than I am in politics in a lot of situations. So when I see people trying to make this into something that it's not, and not picking up on the things that they should really pick up on, like, hey Nancy, how about we do something productive? How about not all roads lead back to trans? I understand, exactly like Jasmine Crockett said, this is making a lot of money for you. You're becoming the hashtag hold the line woman. That's your whole thing. But that hasn't been your thing for a long time. Then also, Jasmine Crockett referred to her as fantasizing about trans people in the women's bathroom, and Nancy Mace was like, how dare she say that to a survivor. She put it on Twitter. I'll post a screenshot here. Well, that wasn't what she was saying. She wasn't saying you were fantasizing about it like you wanted it to happen. She was saying that this is something you're making up in your mind, this idea that there's always men in the women's bathroom. And that was the way Nancy Mace is talking. And comment down below. But honestly, how many of you are seeing men in the women's bathroom on a regular basis? So even though she's trying to make it seem like this is the most important issue in the world, it's really not that important because it's really not happening that much. But then in the end, they ended up deciding that Jasmine Crockett was out of line for calling her child, and then that Nancy Mace inviting her outside was just inviting her outside. Makes no sense at all. And I'm telling you guys, I pretty much can guarantee you Nancy Mace is going to slip up and say the wrong thing. And what's going to happen is all of the causes that she claims to represent, which are going to be women's issues as well, are going to fall by the wayside. Because what I think a lot of people forget is that there are a lot of men in Congress. There are a lot of men in politics. And there are plenty of women in politics that are used to just turning a blind eye and pretending like none of this stuff is happening. And if it's not a big deal for the men, then it's not going to be a big deal for the women because they don't want to rock the boat. And so one thing Nancy Mace has going for her, or the people have going for them as far as Nancy Mace being a representative, is that she is a loudmouth enough to get her issues heard. But the way that she is basically pissing it away, no pun intended, because she is always talking about the bathrooms, but the way she's pissing it away is by being discriminatory in her language, is by not being able to articulate the way that she actually feels about things or why it is she's had a change of heart on certain things. And those things are eventually going to matter. Like, people got mad at her because she was against Steve Bannon. People got mad at her because she was very much pro George Floyd and was talking about racism within this country, and people were not happy about that because that's not really the MAGA message. But now she's all of a sudden Miss MAGA, and eventually people are going to start to nail her to the floor as far as why do you say these things, or why did you used to say these things, or what caused the change of heart. And just trying to gaslight people into believing that she didn't actually say certain things that she did say, or that they're victim shaming her or victim blaming her, whichever way she wants to put it on that certain day, because I've heard her say both. That's victim blaming. That's victim shaming. You are the left, Nancy Mace. You really are the left, and you don't understand it. You aren't even knowledgeable enough in the tactics that you're using to know that these were the tactics of the left. That's what you're doing right now, except for you're just doing it on the right. You are a true snowflake. Like, that's why everything turns into a victimization. Anyway, let me know what you guys think down below in the comments. If you want to see a video of me talking about something a lot more lighthearted and fun, check out the video on your screen. As always, thank you for watching. This has been Ty Rivera, the absolute best LGBTQ comedian in the world.
They bought into his bullshit.